for protocol, but we also can't wait around and assume that this virus is going to go away. This president wants real results, and that's why he took to Twitter. But it wasn't just Twitter. I've answered a number of phone calls from the president and had a number of meetings this last week to make sure that we move it
So
forward.
he does believe there are those in the FDA who are trying to delay approvals for political purposes until after the election.
Well, I believe there are a number of people that do not see the same sense of urgency as he sees, and that as we start to look at it, they know that some kind of result today is good for the American people, and he just wants to make sure that they feel the same urgency.
Let's talk about the post office. The House passed legislation yesterday that would reverse some of the cutbacks at the post office and authorize $25 billion in emergency funding. The president calls this a hoax, saying that the post office doesn't need any additional funds. But the post office has had a request for these funds into Congress since the spring, and you've offered $10 billion in these negotiations with the Congress.
Yeah, we've offered $10 billion plus some additional reforms that would handle some of the pre-funding issues. Listen, the postal system is not sustainable the way it is now. The president knows that. I know that. And as we've offered this money is actually designed to hopefully prop it up while we reform the Postal Service and allow the hardworking men and women of the Postal Service to continue to do what they do and deliver mail on time. I will say this, though. When you look at the bill that was passed yesterday, that bill was not a serious bill. It's $25 billion. It doesn't do anything to sustain the postal system long term. It's going nowhere. And my conversations with a lot of the Democrats on Capitol Hill yesterday is, if you want to be serious about it, this president is willing to put forth money and reforms, but let's attach it to something else. Since we got so many people hurting, why did they come back on a Saturday and only deal with postal? Why did they not deal with enhanced unemployment? Why did they not extend the PPP program that actually helps small businesses? This president is committed to doing that. I believe the Republicans in the Senate will take this bill and actually make it something that perhaps can be signed into law.
I know you stopped by Speaker Pelosi's office yesterday to try to get that started as well. Did you get a response?
I haven't heard from the speaker yet. I'm going to make a phone call to her today. I did meet with a number of Democrats yesterday on Capitol Hill as they were there. Had some very constructive conversations. Listen, there are a number of things that we agree on. And what my challenge to the speaker this morning would be this. If we agree on 5 or 6 things, let's go ahead and pass those. Why did you not do it yesterday? But let's go ahead and pass it. I spoke to the president early this morning. He's willing to sign that, including Postal Service reform and making sure that the money is there to make sure that deliveries of first-class mail are handled quickly, efficiently, and on time.
The president also put out a tweet this morning talking about those mail drop boxes, suggesting they're not secure, even saying, quote, they are not COVID sanitized. Does he really believe those drop boxes could spread COVID?
Well, I mean, we know that COVID actually lives on hard surfaces, so whether it's there or not, when we look at a particular situation, we want to make sure that the ballot is sacred. And I think that's what he was speaking to, George. When we look at casting a ballot, it should be able to go from your hand to the ballot box with no one else interfering. And even when we use the Postal Service to do that, we have to have those verifications to make sure that it would be a George Stephanopoulos actually sending in his ballot so that we know that someone else is not casting it for it. I can tell you, I've worked in the precincts, and when we put ballots in the ballot box, we actually put a lock on it and make sure that no one can tamper with it. And so it is sacred. We need to make sure that everybody's vote is cast, but we also need to make sure that no one else disenfranchises those by creating a fraud on the voting system.
I got to talk about QAnon. Earlier this week, the president had some supportive words for QAnon, but the FBI says that group poses a domestic terror threat. Top Republicans like Senator Ben Sasse and Congresswoman Liz Cheney call it nuts, dangerous lunacy that should have no place in American politics. Why won't the president condemn this group and disavow their support?
Listen, I had to Google it to figure out what it is. You've talked about it more, George, than anybody in the White House has talked about it. You know, when we look at that, there are a number of conspiracies that we ought to be talking about. We ought to be talking about the fact that we continue to look at why the FBI spied on the Trump campaign and what happened there. That was a conspiracy that was real. And when we start to look at, if you look at a top 20 priority, QAnon's not on it. It's probably not on the top 50. You know, it's time that we get serious about questions and move on. I don't see that this is a central debate that anybody's going to decide who the next president of the United States might be or where we need to deploy the FBI. Where we need to deploy the FBI is to Portland and other areas like that, where we see in real time what is happening, not something that may be an internet conspiracy.
Congressman Meadows, thank you for joining us. Good luck this week.
Thank you, George.